Hi, I'm Ashok, and we're continuing our sequel number two, Surfing Infinite Presence, which is a daring thing to allege or to say. And I've been inviting all participants to help hold the space of infinite presence. And episode number 12, 11 and 12, we built up to this dramatic moment, which we're suggesting is a new territory for a human journey into first philosophy, the depth of first philosophy, which is gaining deeper access and intimacy with the source of reality and being. And we don't have to use religious names for what is first and fundamental, although they're all moving to the infinite ground of all reality and being, whatever the name for the infinite is. But we're calling it the source of all, space of reality. It's a field of reality, of being. And the traditions of first philosophy through the ages, first philosophy is the attempt to really get more deeply the grammar, the language, the narrative, the narratology, the language of source that is a source of all possible languages, all possible narratives and worlds and forms of life and ideologies and scriptures and arts and sciences. And we've been doing that experiment. I don't want to keep rehearsing, but I hope you can see why, in seeking to enter as more deeply than ever before by disentangling the dominant codes of our human development and cultures and lives and forms of lives and religions and politics and human relations and life worlds and arts and sciences and human creativity and genius, all of that across the planet for all our human family. That the great frontier thinkers, we call them first responders, responding to what is deeply first, the infinite source. The infinite source is infinitely unum, which means you cannot step outside of it. No one can, nor can it be even thought of. The infinite by its intrinsic nature and power is infinitely one. And infinitely one doesn't mean one in our ordinary forms of thinking, unity or diversity. It is infinitely pluribus, using that word. So unum is pluribus, all the possibilities and diversity in the boundless, from the most micro items to the galactic expanse, are still within the unum sphere. And in this episode 13, which I'm calling Welcome to Presence, again, that sounds like quite a thing to say. It sounds almost like a brat, welcome to presence. But what I've been laboring from 1 through 13 is to show that once we begin to gain access and disentangle the codes, the derivative codes of life, which are marked in the red zone. And remember, a code, a technology of consciousness is not only a logic. The logics we have, the many different logics we've gotten across the planet, and different forms of mathematics and different first philosophies and scriptures and all of that, really, those are laboring under a profound technology that allows us to even have a logic. It's not logic in the content, it's deeper than content that shapes the space of our lives and all forms of mentation and minding. We need words here. Mentation, the minding. And if our minding is expressing the code, and the code has any malware in it, which means it's cutting us off from a deeper code that has a deeper access to the ground floor of reality and to ourselves. Could our technology of consciousness, shaping all forms of thinking, all altered states of mind, all disciplines, all the multiple intelligences and forms of language forms that we have, we know they're boundless forms. Not just human forms, but birds sing. Dolphins give vibrations. Nature sings, nature speaks. There are many forms of language, boundless, diverse, but they're, as we humans, as we are attempting to process and interpret, to experience is to interpret. And to interpret is to use our intelligence and our human will, our rational will and emotional will and heart, whatever we want to say, the heart, mind, whatever. Our wills, it makes a judgment, discerning and interpreting. So experience and life is interpreted, and the question is interpreted within a certain code of interpretation, of mentation, of thinking. And we've been calling that out and seeing in our experiment that when we opened up last time, okay, welcome to presence. In a way, I'll come back to this, please, bear with me. When we say welcome to presence, it's been quite a bit labor to see if this is the fundamental code, the infinite code, in infinite space, the source of all, infinitely unum, infinitely continue unum. That means it cannot be fragmented or broken. And therefore, we have to have, with the source code, the capacity to surf the space of reality, of being, of presence, of what is first. And when we say welcome to presence, we've been opening up the space to say we can't talk about this. We have to surf within it and speak from it. And I've suggested in our last two sessions, as we built up the drama, I invited all participants to join me in this bold experiment because we're all in this together. Everyone is in here. Every art, every discipline, every ingenious moment, every act of evil or ignorance, it's all within here. We're all in this space. It's an unum continuum. And we have to access the technology of presence. And you can't do it from the outside and talk about it, which is what we do beautifully in our narratology and that forms of narration and making human experience and life within the space of interpretation here. We talk about it. We feel it. We get the mathematics, we get the vibrations, we get all of the different arts and sciences and disciplines and philosophies and scriptures, right? Great as they are, the ingenious moments of human are proceeding within a technology, a development of our human technology of mentation. And even our meditation within the mentation, this technology is not going to be the deep meditation that takes us into the source. And so what we did in the last two sessions, I want to build on this in 13. I call on everyone to help, hold space together. Let's hold space together and do this. Because the whole point is we can't speak within this space. We can't narrate and tell stories and give the news and give the content and talk about it. We've done that for centuries and millennia to try and talk about this. We can't talk about this. When you talk about it and put it into content, you don't access it. And so this technology places our different traditions in silos. We have silos all over this place across the planet, different narratives and scriptures. First narrative, scriptures are first narrative, to attempt to allege to present what is first and bring us in touch with first. But what we saw profoundly by looking at our great first responders through the ages, 2,500 years, just to get an arbitrary point, is that they all saw there's a problem of talking about. There's something deeper going on, and it's of the utmost importance in our human development and maturation to see this, where we are, and to see the fallout, look across the planet. I happen to be situated in the USA, and right now things are dramatically falling apart. But the echoes of breakdowns across the planet abound. The sun is coming out as we speak. I hope you don't mind the light. Maybe I need to pause a moment and close the shades. Hold on. We paused a moment. The sunshine was coming and blinding, which of course I welcome. It was blinding the hologram. So what we've been suggesting is that in our experiment in number 11 and 12, but especially we left off in 12 and 13, I want to pick up the experiment that we're doing together. And what I'm suggesting is that we cannot speak to gain access to the source code and source life we cannot talk about. And great as the evolution of this form of mentation, this technology of making our life and our worlds and our feelings and our human relations, our institutions, our governments, everything, all of our life is unfolded within a profound technology that even shapes our logics and our narratives and different mathematics and arts. All of our narratives are here, but there's a deeper narratology. And so how do we speak from the source? How do we speak from the source? And so saying welcome to presence is trying to step back from privileging the red zone, so to speak, and all of the different packaging and silos and histories and categories and disciplines that have all been, and different scriptures and worlds that have been scattered across the inventory of 2,500 years across the planet, the human family, and many cultures and worlds and traditions and so forth, and disciplines and arts and periods of ancient and medieval and modern, contemporary, and all of that. Put that all aside. Welcome to presence. Who is speaking? Who is speaking here? And one of the experiments we asked in 11 and 12 is, where are you? How do you place yourself? On the ground floor, we're all here. We can't be without being. These are some of the axioms that emerge from global, first of all. Like global meaning source of all. The word global here means not globe, way beyond the geography of the globe. It means the space of being. The source, the infinite source, is the source of all possibilities, all narratives, all scriptures, all breakthroughs, all insights, all developments, all events, and therefore all politics, institutions, education, human relations, all of it is shaped by the source. And therefore this is always presiding. We saw that from the start in 11. The unum axiom is axiomatic. This is almost, presence is the principle, the axiom of all axioms. Not like an axiom here. And every word I'm speaking here now, if we dare to allege to speak from source, right? We're not speaking about it, we're speaking from it, in it, within it, acknowledging it. This is first. And we're firsting, alleging to. And so opening this up and say, where are we? Stepping back from all of the different places that we narrate ourselves in, with the IDs and narratives and the CVs that we have and the stories and so forth. And who am I? Who am I? And we saw that our great first thinkers and pioneers have been saying the self is not nameable by the derivative names and subjects and predicates and attributes and CVs and the narratives here really that we live by. The ID that we have here is not our true self. And so we have to cross into the deeper access to being, to serve being. Welcome to presence. Presence is here. In a way, this is absence. This is AWOL. Absent without, because this is the ground. We couldn't be without that. This is one of the axioms of source science. Source science is the science of the infinite space of presence. Infinite first, which cannot be accessed by derivative mental processing or technologies, but requires the source code. So the source code, the source of all possibilities. And therefore, when we try to place ourselves in the source, and that's welcome to presence. We saw last time, I began to really say, okay, I invited all of us to play along together, each of us. If you had to look over the last 2,500 years or beyond and put the different names or traditions or breakthroughs that you find of first pioneers who help to move humanity from the red zone, so to speak, the derivative into the primary, into our source. Why is that? Is that just an option? A hobby, or is it existentially urgent? We suggested it's the highest importance because you don't take the infinite source lightly. The infinite source is operative at every moment. Nothing could be without it. Please think about that. Meditate on that with me. And let's speak from presence. Not talking about it, but surfing within the space of presence. Presence is first. That's what's been so challenging for humanity to go from derivative to primary. We make our derivative forms of speech and thinking and reason and feelings and heart feelings and creativity and songs and poetry and creativity in the sciences and all across philosophy. All of that's going on brilliant. But as long as we are conflated within this source code is being processed within the derivative and they're not differentiated, which we're now saying, oh, this is moved. We've removed all of the red markers and structures, and we say those are constructs from the point of view of the source. So welcome to present means this is first. And I'm asking each of us, whom would you put here in lights to say these gifted men and women or scriptures or whatever you'd like, or scientists, everyone is allowed, everyone is here, all of the great creativity across the board. We saw that. Who would you place here as having been a pioneer in breaking through to helping humanity access this space? Not talk about it. We have a lot of that, but actually to enter into the zone of presence. And we put up, and in this open space, this is an open cultural space for all humans are here contemporaneously. So if we look at Heraclitus, I said back, 500 BC, before the time of Socrates, and here's Heraclitus, and here's Heidegger, Husserl, Sartre, Heidegger, early Heidegger, later Heidegger, and from Heraclitus to Heidegger, they're contemporaries. And here is Moses, and here is Jesus, and here is Muhammad, and here's Buddha, and here's Krishna, and here's Magdalene, and they're all here together in this beautiful sacred space for real, contemporaneous in now time, because time here, derivative time, past, present, future, because this technology builds units. And you can't have any unit without the unum. That's an axiom. If I'm a unit and I got my coherent, I believe that I am an unum, I am me, I am separate, I've got my own history and integrity and unity, and I'm an individual, I'm a unit. If you're a unit, you couldn't be a unit without the unifier. You can't be without being. I'm hoping this is sinking in, and when we're inviting each viewer or each the most frontier scientists of quantum field or the most advanced gurus and self-help teachers and life coaches, wherever you are, in the most advanced science of mathematics, where are you? How do you place yourself? Account for yourself. Step back from the derivative. When Descartes said, I can doubt everything in the red, he didn't see the red zone. He was seeing on the screen of experience, of his life and experience, that as an inquirer, every thought he has could be doubted, because if there's a demon, a red demon, controlling the mind, and the red technology is controlling the mind here, I'm trying to get the truth, then he says, I could doubt it. I could be wrong. Even in the most logically truth or mathematical truth, it could be, I could, because my will is interpreting it. And if the demon is controlling my will and my will is being controlled by the red technology, then I can't be confident in the truth of my narrative and my experience and my rationality here. So he said, I'm stepping back. I'm going to suspend my mind, my body, nature, all of that. I'm just giving you a sense of Descartes' meditation. One example of a first responder who was quite consciously seeking to get to the universal grammar. First, his meditation is called Meditations on First Philosophy. And we know that in that tradition, and this is across the planet, this is East and West, in Eastern cultures of the Vedic science, of Buddha's quest, of Lao Tzu, of Moses, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, right? Language works. We thinkers have language, and what's the logic? Aristotle attempting to articulate the science of logic for this tradition. To think is to predicate, to join subjects and predicates and make sense, and joining them so that the sun is shining, the grass is green, or whatever. I am a man. Uh, you know, I am sitting, or X is greater than Y. Whatever it is, we're using language and joining terms, units. There we go, units. We have units, words have units, and everyone has a meaning. A is A. A is A. It has identity within it. It's an identity practice. Identity is a result of this technology. I am me. I'm a pronoun, and I refer to my own inner constituency. And if I process myself here, then I have all of my attributes, subjects and predicates. I'm a subject with attributes, and I combine them, and that is my ID and who I am. And it gives me a substance with attributes. And we have substance, which is allegedly something that exists in its own right, independently of other things. That's what substance. The substance is prior to the attributes. Attributes belong. All of that's going on. And so the technology is profound, and it works because it makes sense when I combine units and unite them. There it is. I'm a unit. I'm united. Allegedly, I'm an unum. I'm my own unum. Identity gives me my own unum, and that unum is almost placing me in the space of God, the source. When you play that game, but all of the culture is playing that game. And so I'm just giving you an example. So when Descartes was to think, it's almost axiomatic in the rational traditions from the Greek philosophy of Logos, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, specifically Aristotle, but it dominated European thinking for centuries. And Descartes is still under the sway of the Aristotelian logic of I'm a being with attributes. He says, and I have beliefs. I can think. I think. And when I think with reason, I can judge. I will. I can say yes or no, yes or no. To S is or isn't P, is or isn't. It's either is or isn't. It can't be both. That's a fundamental working axiom of this technology. If it either is or isn't, it can't both be and not be. That'll cancel itself, be contradiction, so reason will fall apart. All that's going on. So to think here is to predicate, but to think here is to meditate. And we have not understood that. Descartes was confused. He was pioneering, but he didn't see this. He didn't see the codes. He didn't see that his whole technology of thinking, the red technology, he was using it to get to what is first. And when he said, I'm stepping back from all that, my beliefs, all of my experience, I'm going to suspend it. Minds, bodies, nature, sky, earth, all of it. So I'm stepping back from all of that. Here. But he took this with him. Did he stop predicating? Did he break the barrier of the red zone to meditate, which is a profound shift in technology? So the great meditative tradition saw that you can't predicate to get to the meditative space, because when you meditate, you're not talking about it. You're not following this logic, this grammar, this narratology, this news. You can't have news about this. You have to surf it directly, intimately. So first responders across the planet who were pioneers. I'm using the Descartes example because I think Descartes has been badly misrepresented, and he asked for it because he was conflated. He didn't have a differential between the source code which he was seeking and the derivative code of logic and all the brilliance of mathematics and logic that he had to predicate and to talk about it. And even our feelings are going on here, and our heart math, all of this is going on here. So what does it take to step back truly from and to see the technology, the mindware that's shaping our lives and our thoughts? So you can't just say, I am thinking. Thinking is a concept here. I'm thinking, I'm feeling, I am mind, I am body, all that's going on here. So to say, when Descartes said, I'm stepping back, and he discovered I am, that was a questionable moment. Did he step into the space of presence, into the meditative space? Because remember, his great work, which almost opening up the modern age, is Meditations on First Philosophy. Even that preposition on is meditations on about first philosophy. You can't meditate of, you've got to meditate of, out of. You've got to enter into what is primary. So when Descartes said I am, he was confused. He was conflated. That's the problem we're making. As long as your codes are not differentiated, you're going to default. And Descartes did. He used the predicative tools of this kind of thinking to understand the I am. And he said, what am I? I'm thinking. I'm a thinking being. Already he gave it away. Because the talk of a being is coming from here. He should have, if he were meditating, he said, I am. What I am, he says, I don't know. Because he gave up that language and he stepped back temporarily from that. But he was still thinking, but if you take this technology with you, you're not accessing presence, you're not meditating, you're still predicating. And that's where Descartes fumbled. But he was where he was a pioneer, and this is the point. Would I give Descartes credit? Not arrogantly, but do I accredit Descartes, the Descartes that I see? By placing Descartes' meditations here, placing his voice ambiguously between the two codes, I can hear Descartes right at the edge, ambivalent between speaking here and saying, no, I'm not going there. I'm trying to speak here, but it didn't have the technology for it. But he said, I am. What I am, I don't know. All I know is thinking. You should have said thinking, consciousness. So when I ask each of us to say, please do the experiment yourself and see how amazing it is. Can you place yourself here? Can you truly step back from the red zone and enter into presence? And speak now. Welcome to presence. Who are you? This sounds spooky. And what's going on here on the field of being? What's happening? What is the way the whole cosmos, all of reality is flowing here. And it's the source of everything that could happen. All possibilities going on here. And I suggested in 11 and 12, can we pause and say, who am I here? When I step back from all the red markers and names and forms and space and time and motion and figure and texture and all of these things that we have in our everyday language, and we're into presence, right? And when you go into Vedic science, the Upanishadic wisdom, for example, as another, and that's all on the board together. Descartes is right here with the Vedic, first philosophy of meditation, centuries of deep meditating pioneers who understand that the self here cannot be predicated. Turiya, free of all predications and names and forms and markers. We could have waking, dream, and dreamless sleep, but those are still within this technology, but the self is ever presence. The self is a moment of presence. And presence is an infinite continuum, Om, continue Om. It's an Om sphere, a Tao sphere, a Buddha sphere, a Christ sphere, an Allah sphere, and so on, a Brahman sphere. We can see that now because it's the source of all. So all of these different siloed teachings of here is Moses and that tradition and Jesus and Muhammad and Socrates and Aristotle, and all through from Socrates, Aristotle, through centuries into modern contemporary Anglo-American European philosophy of Husserl and Sartre and Heidegger and the great authors of Dostoevsky and Kierkegaard. Just to drop names, they're all here now. We're all here. Wow. To say that doesn't mean we're now undifferentiated. No. It's infinite pluribus. Diversity. Diversity is sacred. So there's no other Jesus. It doesn't mean there's no one who can Christ, because Jesus allegedly in one tradition, the Gnostic tradition of Mary and Thomas, are saying that what Jesus is teaching was not that he is the way in the sense you've got to go through Jesus here. In this historical space of where we're narrating and getting the news and the Gospels and so forth, which are speaking of a Christ. And the Christ is in the beginning. Why? How can that when we're here, we're Christing, we're Buddhaing, or we're yogaing, we're Vedic science, we're sourcing in presence, we're Zen. All this is going on here. And it's contemporaneous. It's no longer silos. That's done. And the headlines for the human journey is Are we facing the code crossing? Have we seen the code? The technology, code, not a code here, not just a logic, A is A or whatever it is, S is P or not P, that kind of reasoning, or the mathematical versions of logic, or Stoic logic, or three-valued logic, and so forth. So, moving into the logic of presence, what's that? What is a speech of presence? Well, we saw before that if in the beginning is a word, and why would you say that? Because it's infinite. So what? Anything you can come up with here is being derived from the source. Nothing could be without source. And once that begins to register with that, if that's the deep, if we're going to serve presence, then who am I here? If I leave my informationized version and drop that ID, which is operating under the red matrix, or mind operating technology, to a deeper one where I'm surfing presence, which is a boundless unum continuum. All of the diversity of the cosmos is connected in a fractal logic where every point is connected with every other point, and yet there's profound diversity, and every point is unique. So every individual is unique. Every scriptural tradition is Muhammad is Muhammad, Moses is Moses, Jesus is Jesus, Abraham is Abraham, Krishna is Krishna, Lao Tzu, Buddha, on and on. Unique, and yet what? They're in the unum source, the infinite source, the infinite word, which cannot be processed in the derivative, because it breaks and separates by the nature of the red matrix into separate units, and already that's breaking the continuum. That's the mark of the derivative technologies. So what is amazing as we go into 13, this episode 13, I want to go deeper and ask us, who are you here? Stepping back from all of the markers. Because space here, single bracket space, is not spacious. Time is separate from space, because everything space is space, and time is time, and motion, and so forth. And even when we try to get a network, it's not intranet, a name used in the Buddhist tradition, for example. What is the source? It's intranet. Indra is the name for the divine, the infinite spirit, source. And what is intranet? Not internet, but intranet, which means it's a fractal, infinite field of boundless diversity and alterity. Yet each point is reflecting every other point. What a strange logic and narratology for signs and words and language and speech and human experience and life and politics and human relations in that space of connectivity. And if the space, if this is always there, and it's a profound force, an infinite force, source life, if this is source life, and we're living in a desourced space, what would it be like to enter into? If I leave my false ID, my identity, in the derivative where most of us live, and our great teachers say, step back from that and allow yourself to blossom. And what do you find there? And I invited us to think about that. So I'm saying, let's go beyond what Descartes was able to do. Because he took he exported or imported the predicative technology, the old tools, the old mental processing. It haunted him, and he took it into the meditative, and he was trying to make sense of the I am with the derivative tools, and he blundered. Even though there are brilliant breakthroughs, I would say Descartes, as a pioneer, would be on the map as one of the great first responders, first thinkers that was able to pioneer, even though it was confused and conflated. He was conflated, but he was able to see that, wait, when he said, I am, I know not what I am, but he realized that I'm not self-sufficient. This I am is finite. Not finite in the old way, but finite means that he's not self-sustaining. He realized he's not self-caused, because if he were self-sustaining and self-caused, he would be God. And he felt the vulnerability of the I am as a pulsive moment. It's flowing, and he didn't understand the logic. It's not going to die. But he didn't understand that he is not source. He's being sourced, and he's sourcing. And he's moving in the I am pulse, and it's not an entity, it's not a thing with attributes. So when he says I'm thinking, it's a different language. He didn't mean thinking here, predicating, but thinking as profound pulse of awareness, a pulse of presence, a moment of presence. That's profound. That's who we are in this language. That's a Christ space. So the deep call to when Jesus is teaching this, our journey from the derivative space that's alienated from ourselves and from a deeper way, and it really is a disastrous space. To be severed from source is a human disaster. We can't flourish here. And the signs are manifest and evident all across the planet right now. We're still conflated, and we have not crossed into the call to be first sapiens, source sapiens, Christ sapiens, Buddha sapiens, Yoga sapiens, Zen sapiens, Allah sapiens. Rumi is calling it out. I'll meet you here. Ibn Arabi is saying this: the source is first, but again, if it's conflated, the teachers who are seeing this are teaching into the derivative space, and we don't get it. It keeps us here. If a great teacher, if Descartes really saw this more clearly and realized that there's a problem here, and he said, I'm not going back to where I was before, Descartes. He said, because he realized that infinite being must be. That was a infamous proof in the third meditation when he realized, I'm not sourcing myself. I'm here. I am. I exist. Not in this sense. I am. And that I am is very important. And that echoes across the planet. When Moses is with Yahweh on the mountain, who shall sent me to bring the laws? I am. I am that I am. Right? That's not a pronoun here. I am. I am here is not being present. It's not I am. They're two languages. That's the point. They're two technologies of life. And source life and source language and source narrative is not the same as a derivative as rich as this can be. Storytelling here. Welcome to presence is saying, okay, let's do this. This is first. And it looks scary because I want my space and time and cause and motion and color and figure and texture. I want my trees and nature and river. All you want, we want that, right? But you do have it. It's all here. Nature is here. Sacred space is here. This is nature. And the most advanced science of nature, theoretical physics, for example, let's understand the laws of nature. Because no formula can be without a form. I hope you're following this. So if you do, let's go beyond Descartes in welcome to presence, but not drag the old technology. Now that we're more sensitive to, I can't take and live in the red zone and technology and gain access to the deeper space of being a human and culture space and the contemporaneous of now. The unum is infinite now. Time is so magnificent. Source time, where past, present, future are always meeting in the moment. It's not severed. It's always a moment. It's a different space-time continuum. Time continuum, space continuum, mind continuum, life continuum, nature continuum, cosmos continuum. And it means that any word that would be coming out, not the derivative words, if you say space, it's infinite space. But there's time that, yes, space and time are continuum. And how about mind, consciousness and time? Yes, mind and time. Think of Heidegger's pioneering text, Sein und Zeit, being in time. Sein und Zeit, time. It's his early career before he goes on and say, wait a minute, when Heidegger, I'm just mentioning, if you had to put Heidegger, where did Heidegger leave us? In his Sein und Zeit, he was here. He said it's not Sein, it's Dasein. It's existential. The I is, let's go back. I'm sorry to keep doing this. Everyone I bring up here, okay, please stay here, please. Right? And don't try to doubt. Everyone is accountable. Where are you? How would you locate yourself here? Because if you start just doing cosmology as a quantum theorist, for example, or you're saying that, with Pythagoras and with Ramanujan or a great mathematical thinker and so forth, that it's vibration, it's frequency, or anything like that, you are bringing a lot of baggage with you that you have to really see, how did I get that? It's not that we don't have it, but at least acknowledge that when you start to theorize and use a rationality in the form that you have it, and probability theory and all of that in theory, and evidence, and so evidence here is not evident here. The source life of presence has abounding evidence, not to this mind. Bertrand Russell, for example, one of my heroes as a young philosopher, admiring Bertrand Russell. He was an atheist. He means there is no God. And that means, in a way, that can sound as that there is no, an atheist, there is none of this. And you can't prove there is. How are you going to prove that this is, you can't prove it. And so he said, if when you die, Bertrand, and you're before the maker, and you're asked why, and you say to God, the source, why were you an atheist? He quipped, you should have given him more evidence. Very arrogant. Give him more evidence. No, evidence is evident to the one, the observer, but there are two observer. We speak of the observer, but when Heisenberg and others discover the observer factor, the observer affects the observed. The observer of the content interacts with what appears. That's old hat in global first philosophy. That goes back way into ancient Buddha got that. How we mind makes our world. Kant saw that we bring to the scene of experience a network of conceptual structures of reason, of categories of reason and of sensibility and the senses, and our senses of space and time. Space and time is not out there in the objective nature. We bring it, we're wired with space and time. And from space, we have geometry, and from time, we have arithmetic and a category. So we have these two channels of the body, embodied sensible world of senses and percepts and concepts. And he saw that concepts and percepts must be together. He was almost saying concepts without percepts are empty, and percepts without concepts are blind. He was trying to get a way to break out of the splits that take place invariably here. And Kant saw that experience is phenomena, not noumena. We can't understand and encounter or experience. We can't experience what is in itself, the Ding an sich. We can only, whatever we experience, we color with our presence. That's the observer effect. What we see is a function of our seeing and the wiring that we bring to the scene as an observer, and there's no stepping out of that to experience, is to have those transcendental conditions. So we can only see phenomena, which is appearances, but we can't get the reality behind it. There's no way. And yet we're also a free agent, he saw. We're noumenal. Ethics, if we're only in the space, then everything is causally conscripted. So where's the autonomy and the freedom of the free will? Where is their free will? If this is the whole story. Oh, we're citizens of two worlds. He didn't have the code shift. The noumenality was off limits, cannot be known. But that's what Buddha, for example, his enlightenment was to see that you can't experience with this technology, but when you go into the deep meditative enlightenment and surf this field of shunyata, of being, and that's the no self. This self can't be here. It's a no self. The self here is not a self as packaged and constructed in the space. It's a no self. And that sounds weird to us listening here. Myself is, if there's anything I know, is that I exist and I am. And I've got my attributes and my distinctive markers. It makes me an individual here, right? And if you ask me to step back from that, don't do that, right? There's no stepping back, really. But that's the whole point of critical thinking, to mind your minding. Let's mind our minding. That's the meditative term, not the predicative thinking. It's not just meta cognition. That's not meta, the higher and the lower. That's been going on for centuries. So metanoia, metanoia. No, to step back and see this. And Descartes almost could have done that when he said, I'm stepping back. Did he step back here, or did he step back here from the eye, right here, step back within the space? Did he leave this technology when he stepped back from the content of the story and his narrative he was carrying? Because you could do that and just still be someone like Jean-Paul Sartre, who's saying it's not here, the essence, it's existence. And it's être et néant, nothingness. If you strip your predicates and your attributes and your CV, then you're just not someone. You're not something. You're a no thing. You're a thing, but a no thing, an X, a variable. Être et néant, nothingness. But nothingness here is not the nothingness of Buddha, which is this cannot be here. This is emptiness, but it's infinite overflow. So if Jesus is in historical, Jesus is teaching, and Jesus is speaking of the Logos in the flesh, that's already magnificent thought from John. I just using Jesus' example. If Jesus is seeking to teach from the Christ and to say the Christ was before me, the Christ was from the beginning, that's right. The Christ is here. The Buddha space is here. The yoga space is here. And the self that we are is in presence here already, even though it's eclipsed and covered up by a derivative form of life. And our first responders knew that this is not it. Great as this can be, we've got to somehow step back and see this. That's a critical term of meditative thinking. Not meditative is a code shift from this code is first to source is first. Om, Christ, Buddha, Yahweh, Allah, first, being, word, time, space, nature, life. What is a pulse of life in presence? You say, welcome to presence. I hope we're following this. I'm seeking to build and go more deeply. So, because if we don't see this, there's no point in going on 13, 14, 15. I can go until 20, 25, 30. Right? But we have to somehow tarry here, pause, because this has been a profound barrier for humanity, and it's all important. Because this is unsustainable, and this is where we are. We haven't seen the hologram. This is not, if you erase all of that and erase the red and just have where we are and a vast diversity of different, we have poly and pluribus with no unum. If in the USA example, if the founders, as in the Declaration of Independence, were meditatively guided by the source, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that we're endowed by the source with unalienable right, life, liberty, well-being. That's a human. Life, liberty, sacred. How did you get that? Did you get that here? I hope you do. Because if you place yourself here and say, well, is there a deeper way for me to locate myself, a deeper context, a ground floor of being? When Descartes said, I am, can you say I am here and say, who am I now? If I step back from all of the different labels and net cages and categories and narration in Google information space, by information in myself, I can step back from that version of me and enter presence and say, welcome to presence, welcome to here. Who is it? What do I get? Well, I suggested in number 11 that unum is a profound axiom. Nothing can be without unum, which is to say, this is unum. If you want to call it God, God is Godding everywhere. Whatever name you use for the infinite. If it's Brahmans, every Brahman is Brahmaning all in every iota, in every possible place. There's nothing outside of Brahman. And it's Brahman all the way. It's Om all the way. It's Tao all the way. It's Christ all the way. Why? Unum. So what? Nothing could be without being. So if you as a thinker say, okay, if I'm here, double bracket me, what's up with me? Well, Unum means we're all interconnected. Okay, everything is interconnected. Wow, that's interesting. If I'm a continuum being, if I'm an Unum sapien, if I'm a source sapien, I can begin to see some very profound things. I can see the Christ principle. Why? We're all interconnected. Why? Because I couldn't be without infinite source. So I and source are linked. Whoa. And if that's the case, there's the Christ force right there, the Buddha force, the Vedic yoga force. What's that? More along, which is what, as I said in the biblical, if you love God, source, with all your heart, you're not going to put your derivative first. You're going to step back and sacrifice that and enter into presence, which is scary. But then you're not alone. You're not alone as a Lego entity. You're a Logo sapien. You're connected now with that. Why? Because of the Unum. You couldn't be without Unum, and Unum holds it all together. So your Unum self is connected with the entire field of nature, with the whole cosmos, and all of the evolution of all of the great teachers and people across the planet and beyond the planet. We're all in the Unum together. They begin to see, oh, if I can step back from this informationalized version of myself laboring within this derivative technology that's eclipsing a deeper access, and I can somehow flip the code, which is what all important. We missed it. How are you going to flip it if you don't see it? If you don't see the alterity between this form of life and this form of life, and the relation between them, namely, you can't have this without that. That's why this is situated here. You couldn't have the red without being held. And all of this, everything in our everyday culture, all of our languages, all of our insights, all of our everything in our world right now couldn't be without being. That's a profound relation. So if you couldn't be without source, you couldn't think, you couldn't have consciousness, you couldn't anything without source. That's what's going on here. And what does that imply? That unum pluribus means you're woven into the sacred space of a profound intranet, of profound sacred individuality in connectivity. Unum pluribus. What is that? That's a moral law. What? Sacred. The unum pluribus, which means the other, you and the other cannot be divided. I and the other can be I and not I. I marry you. I one, other. I and other, self and non-self, are separate units, and you can't be a unit without anyway. So if you don't acknowledge the source of unity, your unum, your personal unum, you couldn't unum without it, without unum. And to honor that with integrity. If you're going to ego trip and Lego trip and be a Lego and act that way, then at least understand with the source science that, of course, you couldn't be without being sourced. You can't be without being. But once you begin to realize that, even the most radical skeptic and nihilist, a narcissist, and solipsist, who's saying the world is my world or me-centered, and I've got it all. It's all for me. I am God. It's all mine. Even if you do that, you couldn't do that. You couldn't God without this. You couldn't deny it. You couldn't be an atheist without this. You can't be a nihilist without this. When you begin to get humble and see that whatever narrative you're living by or dying by, or whatever your life form or multiple narratives, you couldn't do without this. Nothing could be without being. That's what Descartes began to see when he said, what am I? And the I am, I know not. See, readers, since they themselves are conflated in their reading, when Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. Oh, that's my first premise. I think, therefore I am, is my axiom. And then they beat him up for ego tripping and say he made the ego the center. And not only that, he split the mind and the body and saddled Europe with a mind-body split and dualism. No, that's coming from here. Mind-body split is not Descartes. We went back to Socrates and Plato and the Phaedo. Plato is showing that the soul is a different dimension from the body. The body in the sensible world is becoming, the soul is in the world of rational space and it's being, and the soul somehow, we don't know, enters the body and becomes embodied and has amnesia. And the whole point is to recall while you're embodied in that alienated state of trauma, to recall and remember. So knowledge of who you are is remembering yourself in rational space of the soul space and not the body space. The body is becoming in the soul, is eternal in being in the space of reason. But this is a space of reason. But here there is no split between mind and body. The solution to the mind-body split is not found here in that splitter, but in the unum. The space-time continuum, even the space-time continuum here is not this continuum. We can claim a continuum with our wills. I'm the unum, I'm the physicist, I'm the observer of the observed, and I'm the unifying force. No, you're not. You couldn't be a unified observer without the unifier that allows any observation to take place whatsoever. So science great as it is, and experimental evidence and so forth, scientific methodology, and all that going on here is still not source science. There's something deeper going on. You can't be a scientist without source. You can theorize. You're using rational tools and empirical methods to explore and have evidence and so forth. Great, but you couldn't do that without the source. And if nature is sourcing, and nature seen here, and the magnificence of sacred space of nature, or sacred space of human life. Source life is sacred. Why? Because it's a direct communion with the source. This is communion, intimacy, and therefore our connection with the other, self and other, is infinitely connected in the Unam power. The other, there's alterity here, there's diversity, there's pluribus, there's deep diversity. Right? There's diversity between Jesus and Muhammad and Buddha and Krishna. There's diversity, but there's a profound Unam. That's what's becoming clear now. So if the Vedic science, Krishna speaking, saying, join me, Arjuna, join me here in your true self. And all of the different constructs you have in your predicative self that led to your breakdown and the fratricidal war that you and your family are in, your breakdown, your life breakdown has to do with technology. Krishna doesn't say that. That's what I'm saying. Does Krishna in the Gita make clear? Yes, there's a difference between where Krishna is and where Arjuna is. That's been clear. The dual and the non-dual, but it's not brought out in a way that the call to detach is not to detach from yourself here, to detach from the ego, your desires and your content and your story. That's not enough. You've got to see the technology that's generating this and mind your minding and flip it to join Krishna. To break the sin barrier that cuts us off and join Christ and to discover the Christ. Christ is with us. Christ is with us. God is with us. Brahman is with us. Shunyata, Buddha, is with us. Everyone is a Buddha here. But how do you realize it? You can't do it within here. That's been clear. So what's up? How would a first philosophy, a medically powered source philosophy that sees that all narratives are sourced in the Unam? That's profound. That's a profound shift. I'm taking a moment to try and digest this together meditatively and to say welcome to presence and say, let's flip it now. Let's do it now. We've got the code markers now. We never had this before. And when we say meditation is if you don't have the code, you're going to flounder within the conflation of this with this. If that's not clearly seen, the alterity between the derivative and the primary, it doesn't mean there's a dualism. Alterity doesn't mean a dualism. Dualism is here. Splits with one identity across. There's a chasm between units here. There's no chasm here. There's no split between mind and body. With I and you. You are other, but not split off. The other. And the infinite. You and the infinite. That's what already was. If I am being held by the infinite. And the infinite. So when Quakers says it's God in every person. It's not God's in every person. Every person is in God. This is in every person. It's in every grain of sand. It's in every possibility. It's in the trees. It's in nature. It's in other species. It's in the oceans. It's in the galaxies. It's in all of the motions of the stars. All of the astrology you'd like to do. All of that. This is ruling in every moment. I hope we're getting that. There can never be a unit without Unam. Unam all the way. If Unam breaks the continuum, there's nothing holding it together. My will is not going to do it. And our collective will together holding the conspiracy of a narrative is not going to do it. It's weak. And when people say, live in the present, live now, I hope we can slow it down and say, wait a minute, now, in this space time, it's not now. When you hear the power of now, please be careful. Don't confuse the derivative now, which is a construct of this laboring under this technology, with source now, which is an infinite connectivity of a boundless infinite now. That's eternal life. A pulse of now, here, doesn't die. Death comes from the units of separation and ignorance of not having source medical science. Source science teaches us that this is not where we have to migrate and flip the priorities from my priority to sources first, because it's holding us. And when we have the integrity to experience, as Descartes did, he says, wow, when he proves that infinite being must be, using God, and trying to use the predicative tools to think that the qualities of God, infinite, a being than which none greater can be conceived, he's still talking this way. No, source is not a being, it's not a being than which none greater can be conceived. There must be. That sounds like what he's saying. But what's happening at the deeper level, understood when you place Descartes' investigations here, is that infinite being must be. You can't get away from the source of all. And he says, as long as I stay in this light, it's necessarily true. I'm not going to go back to this and use my will, because my will, my judgment, when I jump to conclusions with my will, that's when I fall into error. But if I stay in the light of source, in the divine light, it must be true. This is very important. Truth, here, the epistemology of presence, the science, source science and presence, Descartes tapped into it. So he was having brilliant moments here. He says, as long as I stay in the infinite light, any concept or thinking that goes on here must be veridical, it must be true. And he answered the question of doubt here. This can all be doubted, but now, what is certain? Source. Infinite being must be. And I can't be without it. It's holding me. Oh, OMG. Oh my God. So it's almost by proving that infinite being, it's not proving it as a predicated proof on paper. QED, therefore God says, no, it's an encounter of the first kind. The infinite being is holding me. Damn. I'm being held. It's almost you're on your knees in gratitude. You're holding me. I see it. And the light of my mind now, the awakened mind, is your light. I'm in your light. I'm in presence. Welcome to presence. And if I stay in the enlightened mind and follow that first, put first, not my will, thy will, source will. If I stay there, I won't fall into error, and that's a place of freedom. And I'm using Descartes' example, but the point I've been making over and over is that this has been echoed through the ages, this point. That Allah, surrender to Allah. Surrender what? Allah is first. What is Socrates saying in the Platonic dialogues? That we're living in a cave. We're seeing the shadows, the constructs on the wall. And we're chained. We're chained. He didn't see that clearly, but he knew that we had to break free. And the whole point of life is to enter into the Logos and know thyself above all. Enter the Logos. What is the Logos? The sacred light of the source of being and life and truth and meaning and everything. When we tap the source. What is Vedic science? It is this Turiya, the self, beyond marks and the red markers. It's the self that is connected in Brahman with the entire field. And this is nirvana. This is bliss. This is well-being. This is the Krishna space. Krishna is calling Arjuna, the everyday person who's lodged in the broken space, to rise with the yoga technologies, the technological change into the meditative surfing of welcome to presence. Jesus, here's the Christ. What is the Christ? It's our inextricable link between ourselves and the source. So when the Quakers are saying there's God in every person is in the space. This is what you mean. Every person is carrying this code because we can't be without being. And we're coded. And once we wake up to our being coded in the space, it's welcome to presence. Step back from the derivative and honor the first as first. And that's when ethics begins. Love and compassion. That's why it's echoed over and over. If you love God, you will love one another. Why? Because loving God is the unum that shows that we're all woven together. And I can't split and objectify the other. That's violent. That's falling back to objectify self or other. So how do you live here? In deep dialogue. Dialogos. Dialogue is not just conversation here in the red zone, talking across your ideologies and mistranslating each other. It's meeting in the I-thou space, a sacred encounter. And that's love, and that is respect, and that is the honor code. That's honor and dignity. We form governments to protect that. We haven't done that yet. That was one of the brilliant remarks of the Declaration of Independence by the founders, who I believe was tapping into and being guided by the source. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Well, again, that's true. Truth is when you're in the light of source. That's what self-evidence. Self-evidence is not evidence to us in the derivative environment. I have my belief here. I believe, yeah, I say yes, I vote yes on this story or this belief system or this principle, but you disagree with that. But the great teachers here know this is ideology. This is the derivative narrative. It's a belief system, and I believe it. And the truth of my belief, if I say Christ is my truth, I believe in the Gospels. I believe that Christ died and sacrificed for me, and I believe it, and I affirm it, and I'll die for that, and that is my faith. I don't have evidence. The way I have that there's evidence that the sun is shining or rain is falling. It's not empirical, but I believe it. But that belief system is not the same as entering into the Christ. So allegedly, Jesus, in one of the tradition, the Gnostic tradition, Jesus was not teaching us to follow an ideology or belief system, but to awaken the Christ within, which is come into source, come into presence. That's a Christ. So the Christ is always there. Brahman is always there. Om is always there. Tao is always there. Allah is always there. Yahweh, whatever authentic name for the infinite source, it's always there. And they can't be split apart. They're unique. Vive la différence. We don't say that the journey of Muhammad is the same as of Jesus or of Moses or of the narrative of Abraham or of Krishna or of Buddha or Lao Tzu. No, they're all diverse, and yet they're bringing out the source. Different ways of saying, when we hear that the Tao that is named is not the Tao, it's trying to give the warning, don't download this source presence into absence. So it's taking time to do this meditation with you. And I hope I didn't drive you away. I hope you stayed to help. And I hope more and more will join us in exploring the space of welcome to presence. It's a different language. It's not talking about, it's speaking from. So in Jesus, they say, I am the way, the truth, and the life. There's the word truth again. What is truth? The source. Why is it? It's not a matter of your will deciding and believing and making it true with evidence within that you marshal up, but when you tap into the fabric of being itself. That echoes across. That's Buddha's four noble truths are here. Existence is suffering. It has a cause. And we're minding. We have a choice. We don't have to mind that way. The third noble truth. Where's that truth? Is that here? No. It's a Buddha truth. So self-evident truth is not derivative truth, it's source truth. The unum axiom. And nothing can be without the unum axiom, which is the unum pluribus, which just means the diversity and unity are connected, and therefore your sacred space and your relationship with the source is profound, and getting to the source of who you really are, and the integrity of, that's what integrity means. Integrity is here, and integrity is moral fabric, and aesthetic is beauty. Beauty and goodness and truth are now inseparable in the unum. We knew it. So the question that we're surfing together, as I try to pause and realize that nothing can be without unum. If you take unum away, if you experiment and remove this, and remove the red, and just have this, the language resources that we're lodged within, and we start without the codes, and to see the alterity between this way of life and source life. and we read our scriptures here, which are allegedly attempting to bring this to life, the scriptures. What is first? And science and quantum thinking. You say there's a field, quantum field, right? And the physicists brilliantly is trying to get away with the alterity between the wave particle and Einstein and going into quantum mechanics and the brilliant mathematics that's going on and talking about the quantum field and almost like the ionosphere of nature. And then we understand that quantum entanglement. Buddha got the entanglement issue centuries ago, that everything is interwoven. And the observer effect is not just the observer effect, but we are as we mind. And if we mind here, the observer is here, you get one kind of life. And if the observer is here, you have a different kind of life. That's a different observer. Evidence here is not evidence here. Truth here is opinion. It's your will is buying into a narrative, an ideology. But the great teachers knew that life and truth, source life, is beyond ideologies. It's not another narrative here. Those are ideologies. It's beyond those narratives. It's not a belief system. It's a flow of life. It's getting to the ground floor, the source of who you are, and living in sacred space. And that's the call of the infinite. And we have to somehow, as a human family, individually and collectively, migrate to put source first and go to source land. The land of the free, the place of survival and flourishing that never dies. A pulse of Unum never dies. It's infinite flow. An intranet, not internet, but intranet. The infinite field of boundless diversity, each point a jewel, or echoing and reflecting everything else at that point. Wherever you are, that's a magnificent jewel in the intranet. The infinite sacred geometry and mathematics of the source. So here again, let's collect ourselves and we'll move into 40 next. I don't want to go over this again, but I feel if we don't pause and get this, then we're just continuing to squander our time and in a dangerous way. So the question that we've asked is, whomever you put up on the field here, whoever you say, your hero, man and woman, Magdalene, whomever it is, Kuan Yin, whatever name, across the planet, whoever your heroes are, heroes being source heroes who help to open up this space, to help to see this and see this and see that we need to move and migrate. Who has done that to your mind? I hinted that Descartes was beginning to ambiguously tried to get to the I am, but took these tools with him, and in a way he blew it. He left himself susceptible to being drugged back here and saying, okay, you're a villain, Descartes, by making the ego ultimate and putting the mind-body split on the backs of modern mind, which is not true. The split goes way back, east and west, in any case. But he becomes the villain. Is Descartes a villain, or was he a heroic pioneer who flubbed it because he didn't have the code? He was conflated, and it shows that if you're conflated, you're going to hit a wall. Descartes did, and he was demoted, right? But there was evidence that he was not proving that infinite being was in this form of proof, but moving into a different kind of meditative reason, meditative proof. And maybe he was not clear, but he was moving into the space. A Krishna might be seen as moving and speaking from the source, the Vedic space of the Om, the voice of Om. Jesus might be seen as pioneering and opening, even though Jesus didn't clearly bring out the derivative code and say, what I'm teaching is when I say I and the Father are one, I don't mean I equal the Father. Don't, that's not what I'm saying. We are all, I and the source are one, not one here, but that means linked. We're one in the infinite space. We are all linked with nature, with other species. The sacred space, that's a Christ space. And how does a teacher who's seeking to help humanity migrate, see that we're in a derivative form of life, and to make the all-important code shift to source life? Welcome to presence. Presence is here too. But the present, those who are the power of now, is not here. I hope you get this. Some people are deceived by that conflation. Now here is not the same as now here. Now here, think about it. The present. Stay in the present. Don't live in the future. Don't live in the past. Live in the present. That's where it's at. And that makes sense. Don't get anxiety ridden about the future and worried about that's unreal. The future is not yet. The past is gone. So the present is, where is the present? Well, if you try it moves before you can reach it. Before you can even reach the present, it's gone. Where is it? It doesn't exist. And that's why certain physicists say time is a construct. It's not real. But you don't have to go that far because there is temporality. Infinite time. Space-time continuum. Now here is power, the power of source. When you speak, if you have a best-selling book trying to speak of the power of now and live in the present, be careful. Which present? This present or presence? Because that's the place of eternal life. But to get to present, you've got to face the code. You can't find the presence here. It is here. Where we are in our artificial narratives, mind operating technology, is still lodged and situated within the sacred space. So the sacred is right here with us now. And we couldn't be here without this. But this, to live in the present here, the present is not presence. And now here, the two languages can be conflated. If you can conflate the single bracket now with the double bracket presence, and you identify them and say, well, live in the present, you could be just still deepening the affliction to the not now. Because this now is not now. And now is source. And source life is boundlessly deep. And it doesn't die. And the whole point of becoming an awakened human, a first person, a noble free being in the free land, source land, is to cross beyond an artificial place of dying and death that comes from separation and fragmentation. But when you find that pulse of beautiful life of Unum, and Unum, although it flows constantly, infinitely, it never dies. Not this death. It's always flow. And that's Zen. That's life in the zone. Zen, mindful, awakened. Christ life, Buddha life, Om life, Rumi life. Ruminate. When Rumi said, meet me in that field. That's the logic. It's going to take us right into the presence of Allah. So where do we go from here? 14. I brought out all of these names. Let's resume. We'll stop now. But I brought all many different names now. Once we get away from all of these artificial separations and silos. No more silos, no more conflation. Conflation is over, the age of conflation. Now we're taking a fresh look at all of the great men and women through the ages and scriptures and narratives and brilliant scientists, mathematicians and dancers and singers and performers of all kinds, so many boundless architects and all the geniuses here, contemporaneous in this now time. And we're asking for you and for me, who amongst them helped to really open a passage from the derivative to the primary? When Kurt Gödel, proved the incompleteness for a certain formalized systems of arithmetic, did he help with that? Well, if you put Gödel here, well, that's almost like a girdle, not Gödel. But if Gödel is here, then he was seeing that the red zone is limited. Did he do that? Is that what he was in effect saying, that any single bracket formal system is going to have a problem of being inconsistent or incomplete? Because if it's it's going to have a contradiction. If it has no contradiction, it's going to be incomplete. So there's a problem with single bracket formal systems. So what about form here? What about Vedic science? Form, source form. Buddha saying this form is emptiness. This is Buddha's formal science. Shunyata, emptiness of this, is infinite form. And we are the formless self. The formed self here is derivative, but the formless, not the red zone, formless self, that's a Buddha. That's a Christ. So if you don't conflate Jesus with the Christ is an open, infinite, sacred space into which Krishna was stepping the Christ, the link between us and the source. Buddha was opening up. the link between us and the source. Muhammad was bringing Jesus. So the Christ, when we realize there's a profound link between us and the infinite source, and it's open. If that's the global Christ, the source Christ, right? Then it's not, to be identified with Jesus, that version of Jesus. There's a double bracket Jesus and a single bracket Jesus, a double bracket Buddha and a single bracket Buddha, a double bracket Krishna, Gita, and a single bracket, and so on. A double bracket Muhammad, and a single bracket Muhammad. And the point is that as diverse as these wonderful first pioneers are, once you got over the conflation of the codes and see that, oh, if I see and listen to their voices here, I get a profoundly different scriptural or understanding than if I read it in the red zone. So we'll end on this note, and I hope this experiment that we're doing together is raising some profound challenges, because the point I'll end on this note is that all of our great first responders, namely those who were gifted somehow to open up space to cross, and we may not have gotten it because they were in silos. If you put Jesus in silos, then you don't see the wider picture. Put Buddha in a silo. If you put Krishna in a silo, if you put Muhammad in a silo, if you put Rumi in a silo, if you put the frontier physicists from Einstein and beyond in a silo, and you put Freud and Jung and Adler and other great psychologists, psychiatry and the psychology, who are trying to understand who is the self and so forth in silos, but open up Freud here or Freud here, Jung here or Jung here, Adler here, Adler here, Maslow here, Maslow here, whatever, whomever, Einstein here, Einstein there. Please experiment. 1776 here, 1776 here. USA here, USA here. Humans here, self here, or self here. And so we'll part on this note that we'll continue in 14 to pick up the gifted first responders who really helped to clarify, or did they? If I ask all of us, did Jesus really help to bring this out, this picture, and to see and point out that there's a derivative code and a Christ code and a source code of logos speech and that when you're speaking here, it's a different language when you're speaking here? Or did he speak into the space to the listeners and left us with that, without, in a conflated space? Was Jesus conflated? Question mark. I'm asking that with all respect. Was Buddha conflated? Of seeing the truth and speaking to the people? Was Krishna and the Gita, the Vedic science, conflated? And Shankaracharya and all the great teachers, Aurobindo and so, were they speaking into the space, speaking the truth into the space? If that was going on, then the conflation was undermining the medicine of the source. But what's got clear, we'll end on this note, what's been clear in the open space of first philosophies and scriptures and teachings and wisdom and enlightenment across the planet is that it's urgent to move into a place of flourishing. We haven't done it yet. And we need the code intelligence to see that it's a shift in the technology of consciousness that has not been brought out sufficiently, code shift. And who amongst our heroes, men and women, have helped us to actually bring out the code shift and see what is involved and the barriers in going into code and the trauma, in a way, of leaving the cave and coming into the light. That itself is an issue, the intercode. Leaving, how do you transition from this version of myself to this? On the path of, how do I go from I to I am? There it is right here. I to I am. That is the greatest journey. This I is surrounded. There it is. But how do I go from this life to this life? How do I let this not dominate my mind operating process and my heart and my mind and their emotions and feelings and experiences to a deeper way to flow with life and source life? That's the most urgent question facing us now, and the future turns on this. We'll end on that note, and on the next one, number 14, to build on this, I'd like to then go into some more detail, like just with the Descartes example, or the Krishna example, or the Jesus example, or the Socrates example. It's open it up and bring in more to show that what happened from Heraclitus and Parmenides before Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, all the way through European lineage, right? They did interplay in that tradition. There's a certain unum unfolding from Heraclitus to Heidegger and beyond Hegel and beyond the analytical revolution of the mathematical logic and then the continental logic of Husserl and the logic of Hegel. There's a profound unum going on. But now when you put Hegel next to Nagarjuna or Hegel next to Vedic science, and so you get a different understanding because they are indeed in the same unum space. And we've opened that up now. And we can say even is a great composition in music opening up the space. Can music open up the space? Can the language of dance open up the Shiva dance, the Lord of Dance, open up the zone, the source? Can a great performing athlete in a high moment of being in the zone? Here's the zone. And it's always there. We have access to it. We can have moments where we slip into the zone without even knowing that we're just being magnetized into a deeper form of performance, into peak moment, right? Can we live in a peak moment? Can we live in the zone? Can we go from Gen Z, the name for the current gen, to Zenji, the Zen generation of all ages? Can we do that? That's what we're exploring. So please come back and join us in episode 14. Let's see how you do it and how you assess some of our great heroes. Did they help to see the code crossing and deal with the intercode exchange and turbulence and challenges to actually get real and access intimacy with being? We'll continue that in number 14. Please come back. And thank you so much for hanging with us. Be well.